He thought humiliating a quiet woman would entertain his students, but before the hour was over, everyone in that room would learn how dangerous it is to mistake calmness for weakness. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now back to Claire Bennett. The afternoon sun stretched long bars of light across the front windows of Iron Gate Jiu Jitsu Academy, painting the polished floor in gold. Inside, the room carried the quiet sounds of routine discipline, sneakers against mats, gym bags unzipping, low conversations, and the faint hum of ceiling fans pushing warm air through the space. It was a respected academy on the north side of town, known for serious training, strong competitors, and a culture that claimed to welcome anyone willing to learn. Claims, however, are cheap when pride is in charge. Tyler Brooks stood near the center mat with his arms folded across a broad chest, his black belt tied with theatrical precision. At 34, Tyler had built a reputation almost as carefully as he built his physique. He was skilled, certainly, but skill was not what people noticed first. They noticed volume. His laugh was loud, his opinions louder, and his need to dominate every room louder still. New students often mistook confidence for character. Veterans knew the difference. The front door opened softly. A woman stepped inside carrying a faded canvas bag over one shoulder. She wore a plain gray hoodie, dark leggings, and clean white sneakers that had seen better years. Her blonde hair was tied back simply, and there was nothing about her appearance designed to impress anyone. She paused for a moment, scanning the room with steady blue eyes, then walked to the check-in desk as if she had all the time in the world. Tyler noticed immediately. Men like Tyler always notice the people they think are easy targets. Few students glanced over, then quickly looked back at their phones or stretches. Some smirked. Others just watched. The woman signed the waiver, thanked the receptionist, and removed her hoodie, revealing an ordinary athletic shirt and the relaxed posture of someone who did not need to prove she belonged. Tyler crossed the mat toward her with the swagger of a man who believed the room was his stage. "You here for cardio kickboxing?" he asked, loud enough for others to hear. A ripple of laughter moved through the class. The woman looked at him politely. "I'm here for the 6 o'clock fundamentals session." Tyler tilted his head, smiling the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. "Fundamentals. Smart choice. We like to start people slow." More laughter followed, sharper this time. She nodded once. "That sounds fine." Her voice was calm, almost soft. No irritation, no embarrassment, no need to perform outrage for strangers. Tyler seemed disappointed by that. Bullies prefer reaction. Without it, they must work harder. "What's your name?" he asked. "Claire Bennett." He repeated it theatrically to the room. "Everyone say hello to Claire. Let's make sure she survives warm-ups." Several students chuckled. One younger man near the wall laughed the hardest, eager to borrow Tyler's confidence. Claire simply set her bag beside the bench, folded it neatly, and stepped onto the edge of the mat. Coach Mason Reed, the academy owner, watched from the office doorway without speaking. At 58, Mason had spent decades around competitors, pretenders, and the dangerous silence of people who no longer needed applause. When Claire removed a plain wedding ring and placed it carefully in her bag, he noticed the small scar across her wrist. His eyes narrowed slightly. Tyler clapped his hands. "Circle up," he barked. "Tonight should be fun." He thought he was beginning a lesson for her. He had no idea one was already beginning for him. The class formed a loose circle around the center mat, some kneeling, some stretching, all pretending not to stare at the newest student who had become the evening's entertainment. Tyler paced in front of them like a game show host who already knew the ending. "We begin with movement," he announced. "Balance, posture, awareness. Things people usually need months to understand." His eyes drifted toward Claire. "Sometimes longer." A few students laughed on cue. Claire stood near the back of the line, shoulders relaxed, breathing evenly, as if she were waiting for a bus instead of standing inside a room that wanted her to feel small. Tyler demonstrated a basic footwork drill, exaggerating every step for effect. Forward, back, angle out. Nothing complicated. He moved crisply, then pointed toward Claire. Would you like to try? Or should we lower expectations? The younger man from the wall laughed again, louder than before. Claire stepped forward without hurry. I can try. Tyler gave a dramatic shrug and stepped aside. She mirrored the drill once, smooth and economical, no wasted motion, no stiffness, no confusion. Then she repeated it faster, changing direction with the quiet precision of someone who understood space better than the people teaching it. The room grew slightly quieter. Tyler's smile tightened. Beginner's luck, he said. Happens all the time. He moved on quickly to grip breaks and posture control, pairing students together. Claire was left without a partner for a moment until Tyler waved Jake Harmon over. Jake was 26, athletic, eager to impress, and the kind of student who borrowed arrogance because he had not yet built identity. Help her out, Tyler said. Keep it simple. Jake smirked as he approached. Do not worry, he told Claire. I will go easy. That is thoughtful, Claire replied. Jake reached for the assigned practice hold, but before he could settle his hands, Claire shifted one step, redirected the angle, and reset them both into proper starting position. It was subtle, almost invisible, but Mason Reed noticed. So did two older students near the back. Jake blinked. I had it. Claire's expression remained neutral. Your elbow was too high. A few heads turned. Tyler's jaw flexed. Let us stick to my instruction, he said sharply. Everyone watch me. He demonstrated again, slower this time, then sent them back to drilling. Jake tried once more. Again Claire. Adjusted with the smallest movement. Never rude, never forceful, simply placing things where they belonged. It was like watching someone straighten a crooked picture frame. Jake's confidence began leaking out of him 1 ounce at a time. Around the room, the laughter had faded into whispers. Tyler felt it. Men who need control can sense the moment it starts slipping away. He clapped loudly to reclaim attention. Enough basics, he said. Sometimes people mistake simple drills for real skill. He looked directly at Claire. So let us test comfort under pressure. Several students straightened. They knew that tone. Tyler loved demonstrations when he controlled the outcome. Mason stepped halfway out of the office doorway. Tyler, he said evenly. Keep it instructional. Tyler nodded without looking at him. Always coach. But the spark in his eyes told a different story. He turned back to the class. We are going to do a light positional round. Nothing intense. Just learning. Then he pointed at Jake. You. Center mat. Jake stepped forward immediately. Tyler's gaze moved to Claire. And you, since you seem eager to teach tonight. Claire picked up her water bottle, took one calm sip, and set it down beside her folded bag. No tremor in her hand. No sign of nerves. She walked to the center mat as the room widened around them. Even the ceiling fans seemed louder now. Mason watched Claire's feet, then the old scar on her wrist, then the way she lowered her stance without drama. Recognition stirred in his face, but he said nothing yet. Tyler folded his arms and smiled at the circle he had created. He still believed this was his moment. The room was about to learn whose moment it really was. The circle around the center mat tightened by a few careful inches, the way crowds always do when they sense something worth remembering is about to happen. Jake rolled his shoulders and bounced lightly on the balls of his feet, performing confidence for the room. Tyler stood nearby with his arms crossed, wearing the satisfied expression of a man who believed he had arranged the evening perfectly. Claire faced Jake with a calm posture that looked almost casual to anyone who did not understand control. Her hands were low, her breathing steady, her eyes clear and unreadable. Mason Reed remained near the office doorway, watching more closely now than anyone realized. Light positional round, Tyler said loudly. 30 seconds. Jake, show good fundamentals. Claire, just try to survive. Several students laughed again, though softer this time. Doubt had entered the room, and doubt always lowers volume. Jake nodded. Ready. Claire inclined her head once. Ready. Tyler stepped back and motioned for them to begin. Jake moved first, quick and eager, reaching to establish grips the way he had practiced 1,000 times. Claire gave ground by half a step, not retreating, simply guiding the space between them. Jake adjusted and came forward again, more committed now. What happened next was so efficient that some people would later argue about the order of events. Claire turned slightly, redirecting his momentum without force. Her foot placement changed by inches, her shoulders by degrees. Jake's balance disappeared before he understood it had been borrowed. He dropped to one knee, surprised more than hurt, and Claire flowed with the motion as naturally as water finding a slope. A hush fell over the room. Jake tried to recover position, but Claire was already one movement ahead, controlling angles, removing space, answering effort with timing. There was no struggle, no chaos, no drama. Only precision. She settled into a clean hold that left Jake staring at the mat in disbelief. 2 seconds later, his palm tapped rapidly in surrender. The sound echoed sharper than it should have. Tyler looked at the wall clock automatically. 14 seconds. No one spoke. The younger students who had laughed earlier now stared with open mouths. One woman near the back slowly lowered the phone she had been pretending to check. Jake sat up, face flushed, breathing harder from confusion than exertion. I slipped, he said quickly, to no one in particular. Claire stepped back at once and offered him a hand up. You rushed your base, she said kindly. It happens. He hesitated, then accepted her hand. Tyler's smile had vanished. Again, he snapped. Lucky scramble. Reset. Mason's voice cut through the silence before anyone moved. No, it was not loud, but it carried authority that did not need volume. Tyler turned. Coach. He just lost focus for a second. Mason walked slowly onto the mat, eyes still on Claire. No, he repeated. He lost to timing, balance, and experience. He stopped a few feet from her. Would you mind telling me your name again? Claire Bennett, she said. Mason studied her face, then the scar on her wrist, then the calm way she stood while every eye in the room searched her for answers. Recognition settled over him fully now. 12 years ago, he said. Pan American Finals in San Diego. Wrist injury in the semifinal. You still won bronze the next day. The room went completely still. Jake blinked. Tyler's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Claire gave the smallest smile. I did not expect anyone here to remember that. Mason let out a short breath of disbelief. People who love this sport remember excellence. Tyler shifted his stance, suddenly uncertain what to do with his hands. His stage had become a courtroom. Claire reached for her water bottle and took another calm sip. She had not raised her voice once. She had not asked for respect. Yet somehow she now had all of it. No one moved for several seconds. The air inside Iron Gate Jiu Jitsu Academy had changed in a way every serious training room recognizes immediately. Arrogance had entered first, but truth had stayed behind. Jake stepped back toward the wall, quieter now, replaying the last 14 seconds in his mind, as if there had to be an explanation hidden somewhere between the movements. There was one, of course. Discipline. But discipline is rarely dramatic enough for wounded pride. Tyler forced a laugh that sounded thinner than before. Well, he said, clapping once. Looks like Claire forgot to mention a few things on the waiver. No one laughed with him this time. Silence can be many things. In that moment, it was judgment. Claire picked up her wedding ring and slipped it back onto her finger with the same calm care she had shown before stepping onto the mat. You did not ask, she said. Her tone was gentle, almost conversational, yet it landed harder than any raised voice could have. Mason Reed folded his arms and studied Tyler for a long moment. And you did not ask because you had already decided who she was. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. I was just keeping the class loose. No, Mason replied. You were keeping yourself important. Several students lowered their eyes. They had seen versions of this before and said nothing. Now the room was being asked to notice itself. Tyler looked toward Claire, searching for a way to recover control. If you were a competitor, you should have said so. Claire met his gaze without hostility. If this were a place that respected beginners, I would not have needed to. The words were quiet. The effect was immediate. One of the younger women near the back exhaled sharply, as if someone had finally said what many had felt. Mason nodded once, slowly. Class, line up. The students moved quickly, forming rows across the mat. Tyler joined them after a short hesitation, taking a place at the far end rather than the front. It was the first wise decision he had made all evening. Mason turned to Claire. Would you be willing to teach the next 15 minutes? Tyler's head snapped up. A few students exchanged stunned looks. Claire seemed almost amused. Only if everyone is comfortable with that. We are, said the young woman from the back row before anyone else could speak. Others nodded. Jake raised his hand halfway, embarrassed by the gesture, then spoke plainly. I would like to learn what I missed. Claire gave him a respectful nod. That is a good place to start. She stepped to the center of the mat, not with swagger, not with revenge, but with the natural steadiness of someone who had nothing to prove. Most people think control begins with strength, she said. It usually begins with balance. Yours first, then the other person's. She demonstrated foot placement slowly with Jake volunteering again, this time attentive and humble. She corrected angles with precision, explaining leverage in simple terms anyone could understand. Students leaned forward. Phones disappeared. Egos quieted. Even Tyler listened, though he tried not to show. Mason watched from the side with the faint expression of a man seeing an old standard restored. 15 minutes passed faster than the previous hour. The room that had laughed at Claire now followed every word she said. When she finished, several students applauded instinctively, then seemed surprised at themselves. Claire smiled and shook her head lightly. Save applause for consistency, she said. Show up, train kindly, and help the next new person feel welcome. Her eyes moved briefly toward Tyler, then away. No cruelty, no triumph, just truth placed where it belonged. Tyler swallowed and stepped forward at last. The room watched him more carefully than they had watched any technique. Claire, he said, voice smaller now, I owe you an apology. She adjusted the strap on her canvas bag. Then start by giving one to the next person before they earn it. The room went silent again, but this time it felt cleaner. The class remained on the mat long after the scheduled end time, as if no one wanted to be the first person to break the spell of what had just happened. Iron Gate had always been loud with effort, chatter, and advice no one asked for, but now a different energy moved through the room. People spoke softer. They listened longer. They looked at one another with more care. Sometimes the strongest lesson in a gym has nothing to do with technique. Mason Reed checked the wall clock and gave a rare smile. 5-minute water break, he said. Then optional drilling. No one headed for the door. Students gathered around Claire. Not in the frantic way people crowd celebrity, but in the respectful way people approach substance. The young woman from the back introduced herself as Emily and admitted she had nearly quit after 2 weeks because she felt invisible. Claire listened fully before answering. If a room makes humility feel like weakness, the room needs correction, not you. Emily's eyes watered slightly, and she nodded as if someone had finally translated a feeling she could not name. Jake approached next, hands clasped awkwardly in front of him. I was rude, he said, and I copied someone else's attitude because it felt easier than thinking for myself. Claire considered him for a moment. That honesty will help you more than talent ever could. Jake let out a breath he had clearly been holding. Across the mat, Tyler remained near the equipment rack, pretending to organize belts that did not need organizing. Pride often lingers after truth arrives, hoping no one notices it has nowhere left to stand. Mason walked over to him quietly. No one heard the first few words, but everyone saw Tyler's posture change. Shoulders lowered. Chin no longer tilted upward. When they turned back toward the class, Tyler took several measured steps to the center mat. The room fell silent once more. "I built bad habits," he said, looking not at Claire but at the students. "I thought making people feel small made me look strong. It does not." He swallowed hard. "If any of you felt unwelcome here because of me, I am sorry." No one rushed to rescue him from discomfort. That was wise. Some apologies need room to breathe. Then Tyler faced Claire directly. "And I was wrong about you before you spoke a single word." Claire gave a small nod. "Many people are wrong before they listen." A few students smiled despite themselves. Mason clapped his hands once. "Good. Then we improve from here." He looked around the room with renewed authority. New rule at Iron Gate. Every first-time student gets a partner, respect, and patience. No exceptions. Heads nodded across the mat. Even those who had laughed earlier nodded fastest. Claire slung her faded canvas bag over her shoulder and moved toward the exit. Mason stepped beside her. "You should teach here," he said plainly. "Even once a week." She smiled toward the front windows where dusk had replaced the afternoon light. "I travel for work too often." "What do you do?" he asked. She paused with one hand on the door. "I coach youth confidence programs at community centers. Mostly girls who have been told to shrink themselves." Mason laughed softly, impressed in a way money could never purchase. "That tracks." Claire opened the door, cool evening air slipping into the gym. Before stepping out, she turned back to the room. "The next beginner who walks in here will tell you whether tonight mattered." Then she was gone. No dramatic exit. No demand for recognition. Just the quiet certainty of someone who understood that real influence does not linger to be admired. The students stood still for a moment, each carrying a different version of the same lesson. Emily tied her belt tighter. Jake began helping stack mats without being asked. Tyler walked to the front desk and personally greeted a nervous man who had just entered for a trial class. "Welcome," he said sincerely. "You are in the right place." Mason watched it all and nodded to himself. Respect had not entered Iron Gate through noise, force, or ego. It had walked in carrying a faded canvas bag. The next morning, Iron Gate Jiu Jitsu Academy opened 15 minutes early. Mason Reed noticed because Tyler Brooks was already inside, sweeping the mats himself. In 10 years, Mason had never seen that happen without being asked. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Tyler worked in silence, moving carefully along the edges where dust collected and attention usually did not. Pride often avoids small chores. Humility starts there. Mason set his coffee on the front desk. "You are early." Tyler kept sweeping. "I have been late for a long time." Mason said nothing for several seconds. That was one of his strengths. He knew when silence could teach more than speeches. By 6 o'clock, students began arriving. Usually Tyler would stand near the center mat and command the room before anyone else settled in. Today he remained at the entrance, greeting each person by name, helping first-timers sign waivers, and carrying loaner gear from the storage closet without theatrics. Some students looked confused. Others looked relieved. Emily entered next, gym bag over one shoulder, posture noticeably straighter than the day before. Tyler stepped aside and opened the door wider for her. "Good morning, Emily." She blinked once, surprised. "Good morning." Jake arrived carrying a box of bottled water he had purchased himself. "For the class," he said awkwardly. Mason raised an eyebrow. "Voluntary generosity. Miracles do happen." Jake laughed and set the box by the bench. The room slowly filled with ordinary conversations, but something beneath them had changed. No one mocked the nervous new man tying his borrowed belt backward. Emily quietly fixed it for him. Jake offered to partner with a teenager who looked intimidated. Tyler demonstrated warm-up movements slowly enough for beginners to follow instead of showing off speed for advanced students. It was still the same academy, yet it was not the same room. Around 7:30, the front door opened again. Claire Bennett stepped inside carrying the same faded canvas bag and wearing the same plain gray hoodie. Conversations paused, then softened into smiles. She had not come for applause, but respect rose naturally anyway. Mason walked over first. You forgot to charge us tuition for yesterday's lesson. Claire smiled. Then I should not interrupt class. You are not interrupting it, Emily said from across the mat. You improved it. A few students nodded. Tyler approached more slowly than anyone had ever seen him move. I wanted to thank you, he said. And I wanted to tell you we changed our beginner policy this morning. Claire glanced around the room, taking in the new pairings, the calmer energy, the absence of performative noise. Looks like you did more than that. Tyler lowered his eyes briefly. I am trying. Good, Claire replied. Trying beats pretending. Mason asked if she would stay for one round of instruction. Claire considered, then set down her bag. 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes felt different from the night before. She showed the class how posture communicates confidence before words ever do. She explained that people sense whether you respect yourself, and many bullies depend on those who do not. She had students practice standing balanced, making eye contact, and speaking clearly. No one expected a lesson like that in a grappling gym, which is exactly why they needed it. Even Mason took notes in his head. When she finished, Claire picked up her bag again. I really do have to go to work now. Jake grinned. What kind of job makes someone this wise before breakfast? Claire zipped her hoodie and answered casually. I run youth programs at 3 community centers and train instructors how to build confidence in kids. Emily smiled. That makes sense. Tyler opened the door for her as she stepped out into the cool morning light. Will we see you again? He asked. Claire paused on the sidewalk. That depends. On what? Tyler said. She looked back through the doorway at the students helping one another, at the beginner laughing nervously with new partners, at Mason standing quietly proud. On how you treat the next person who walks in looking ordinary. Then she left. The room went silent for one breath. Then training resumed with more purpose than ever before. Because some people win matches. Others change rooms. Claire Bennett had done both. 3 weeks later, the changes at Iron Gate were no longer temporary gestures made after embarrassment. They had become habits. And habits, unlike apologies, are difficult to fake for long. The front desk now displayed a handwritten sign that read "First day means welcome here." Loaner uniforms were folded neatly by size. New students were introduced by name instead of by nervousness. Tyler Brooks had written the sign himself, then laughed when Mason Reed made him rewrite it twice for crooked lettering. On Tuesday evenings, the beginner class had doubled in size. Some came for fitness, some for discipline, some because a friend said the place felt different now. They were right. Emily no longer stood near the back wall, hoping not to be noticed. She helped run warm-ups, pairing anxious newcomers with patient partners and reminding them that everyone feels awkward on day one. Jake had become unexpectedly useful, carrying equipment, staying late to clean, and learning that confidence grows faster when it serves others. Mason watched all of it with quiet satisfaction. He had spent decades teaching grips, balance, timing, and pressure. Yet one ordinary woman with a faded canvas bag had taught the lesson his academy needed most. On a rainy Thursday night, the parking lot glistened under streetlights as students filed in shaking umbrellas dry. Tyler was explaining posture to 2 teenagers when the front door opened and a middle-aged man stepped inside with his daughter, who looked about 13. She wore oversized sweatpants, held her backpack straps tightly, and kept her eyes fixed on the floor. Tyler recognized that posture immediately now. It was the posture of someone preparing to be dismissed. Welcome, he said gently. I am Tyler. What are your names? The father looked surprised by the warmth. I am Greg. This is Nora. She wanted to try one class. Nora barely nodded. Emily crossed the room and crouched slightly so she was at eye level. I was nervous my first day too, she said. You can stand by me. Nora looked up for the first time. Something in her face softened. Mason caught Tyler's expression across the mat. It was the look of a man seeing proof that change was real. Halfway through class, the door opened once more. Claire Bennett stepped in quietly, rain droplets still on her gray hoodie. She had no announcement, no grand return, and somehow the room noticed anyway. Emily smiled first. Jake nearly dropped a stack of pads. Tyler walked over, not with swagger this time, but with gratitude. "Good timing," he said. "You should see this place now." Claire glanced across the room where Nora was practicing footwork beside Emily, smiling despite herself. "I already do." Mason handed Claire a towel for the rain. "Stay and watch?" he asked. "Only for a few minutes." She stood near the wall while class continued. Tyler corrected students patiently. Jake encouraged beginners instead of competing with them. Emily demonstrated drills with calm confidence. Nora laughed out loud after stumbling and trying again. It was a small sound, but in rooms like that, small sounds matter. When class ended, Greg approached Claire without knowing who she was. "My daughter has been bullied at school," he said quietly. "This is the first place she has looked comfortable in months." Claire looked toward Nora, who was helping roll mats with Emily. "Then keep bringing her." Greg nodded gratefully and walked away. Tyler turned to Claire. "You were right. The next beginner told us whether that night mattered." Claire smiled. "And what did she say?" Tyler looked across the academy where students of every level were cleaning together, talking together, learning together. "She said we finally became what we claimed to be." Claire adjusted the strap on her faded bag and headed for the door once more. Mason called after her. "You know you always have a place here." She paused, hand on the handle. "Good," she said. "Make sure everyone else feels the same." Then she stepped into the rain and disappeared into the night, leaving behind the kind of silence that does not come from shock anymore, but from respect. By early fall, Iron Gate Jiu Jitsu Academy had become the kind of place people described to friends with unexpected warmth. Parents recommended it. College students drove across town for beginner classes. Adults who had postponed trying something new for years finally walked through the doors. The reason was not better marketing, larger mirrors, or louder music. It was culture. And culture always reveals who is leading when no one is watching. Tyler Brooks now arrived first and left last more often than anyone else. He remembered names, noticed nerves, and paired shy newcomers with patient partners before anxiety could harden into excuses. Some students still remembered the man he used to be. Tyler remembered him too, which was why he worked so hard not to become him again. One Saturday morning, Mason Reed pinned a flyer near the front desk. Community open house. Free intro class. Confidence workshop for teens. Emily read it first. This was Claire's idea, was it not? Mason smiled faintly. "I called her after class last week. She agreed to lead the workshop if she is in town." Jake nearly dropped the jump ropes he was carrying. "She is coming back?" "If we are lucky," Mason said. The week moved slower than usual after that. By Saturday, the academy buzzed before sunrise. Mats were cleaned twice. Water bottles lined the wall in neat rows. Tyler adjusted loaner uniforms until Mason told him to stop fussing. Families began arriving at 9 o'clock. Nervous teens came with folded arms and practiced indifference. Parents came with hopeful eyes. Former students came to see what had changed. The room filled with conversations, sneakers squeaking, and the bright energy of people wanting a fresh start. Then the front door opened. Claire Bennett entered, wearing jeans, a navy sweater, and the same faded canvas bag that had somehow become more famous than many championship trophies. There was no dramatic music, no applause requested, and yet the room straightened itself. Respect often does that on its own. Nora, now noticeably more confident, was the first to run over. "You came." Claire smiled. "You kept showing up. That matters too." Emily hugged her. Jake offered to carry her bag and was politely refused. Tyler approached last. "We saved you the center mat," he said. Claire glanced around the crowded room. "Good. I was hoping to avoid attention." Tyler laughed. "That ship sailed weeks ago." The teen workshop began with no talk of medals or competition. Claire had the students stand in pairs and practice introducing themselves clearly. Shoulders back. Eyes forward. Voices steady. Then she taught them how to create space, how to breathe when embarrassed, how to recover after mistakes in front of others. "Confidence is not the absence of nerves," she told them. "It is the decision not to obey them." Phones were forgotten. Parents leaned against the walls, listening harder than the teenagers pretended not to. Mason watched from the office doorway with folded arms and quiet pride. Tyler assisted without trying to lead. That, more than anything, showed how far he had come. During a short break, a well-dressed man in an expensive jacket approached the front desk complaining that the beginner area was too crowded and asking whether members received priority over walk-ins. Months earlier, Tyler might have catered to status automatically. Instead, he smiled politely and pointed toward the mats where teenagers were learning to stand taller. Today, everyone has priority, he said, especially the people finding courage. The man blinked, then said nothing more. Claire heard the exchange and gave Tyler a brief nod from across the room. It meant more to him than praise. By noon, the open house ended with laughter, tired smiles, and sign-up forms scattered across the desk. Parents thanked instructors. Teenagers who arrived withdrawn left talking loudly with new friends. Nora stayed behind to help stack mats beside Emily. Claire picked up her canvas bag and headed for the door again. Mason stopped her. "You realize this place would not look like this without you." Claire looked around the room, then back at him. "That is not true." She glanced toward Tyler, greeting a nervous newcomer, Jake carrying equipment for others, Emily coaching Nora through footwork. "It looks like this because people chose to change." The room went quiet for a moment, not from surprise now, but because everyone knew she was right. Winter arrived quietly, and with it came the kind of cold mornings that made people choose comfort over discipline. Yet the parking lot at Iron Gate Jiu Jitsu Academy filled before sunrise 3 days a week. Headlights cut through the dark. Breath fogged in the air. Car doors closed with purpose. Inside, the mats were warm, the lights bright, and the atmosphere steady in a way few places ever achieve. People no longer came only to learn technique. They came because the room made them better versions of themselves. Mason Reed often stood near the front desk before class began, coffee in hand, watching small moments that mattered more than trophies. Tyler greeting the shy accountant by name. Jake helping an older beginner tie his belt correctly. Emily leading warm-ups with confidence she once thought belonged to other people. Nora, now stronger and louder in all the best ways, mentoring a new middle school girl who barely spoke above a whisper. This was the scoreboard Mason trusted most. One December evening, snow drifted past the windows in soft white sheets as the academy hosted its year-end gathering. Nothing fancy. Folding tables, store-bought cookies, paper cups, and students laughing in hoodies after training. The kind of celebration built from sincerity instead of budget. Mason tapped a spoon against a mug to get everyone's attention. The room settled. "I have run gyms for 30 years, he said. "I have seen talent, medals, and ego dressed up as leadership. But this year I watched something rarer. I watched people choose humility after being given every excuse not to." His eyes moved around the room, then stopped near the back door. Claire Bennett had entered quietly 10 minutes earlier and hoped, unsuccessfully, not to be noticed. A smile spread through the crowd as heads turned. Tyler started the applause first. Then everyone joined in. Claire shook her head, half amused, half embarrassed, but the warmth in the room would not be denied. Mason continued. "Some victories happen in seconds. Others take months. The second kind matters more." He stepped aside and held out a small plaque made from plain wood. No gold trim, no dramatic engraving. It simply read, "For changing the room." Laughter and applause rose together. Claire walked forward slowly. "This seems excessive," she said. "That is how we know it is sincere," Mason replied. She accepted the plaque and looked at the crowd of students who had once been strangers connected only by routine. Now they looked like community. "I appreciate this," she said, "but I did not change the room alone." She turned toward Tyler. He chose to listen after being humbled. Tyler lowered his eyes with a smile. She nodded to Emily. She chose confidence. Emily laughed through sudden tears. She looked to Jake. He chose character over image. Jake straightened proudly. Then to Nora. And she chose courage before she felt ready. The room applauded louder than before. Claire set the plaque on a table beside the cookies. That is how rooms change, one choice at a time. Later that night, as people cleaned up and stacked chairs, Tyler walked Claire to the door. Snow had covered the sidewalk in a clean white layer. You know, he said, I used to think strength meant controlling the room. Claire zipped her coat and looked out at the streetlights glowing through falling snow. Most people do. What does it mean now? He asked. She smiled faintly. Leaving it better than you found it. Tyler stood silent for a moment, letting the words settle where pride once lived. Claire stepped outside, her faded canvas bag over one shoulder, footprints forming behind her in the fresh snow.